Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Equalizer. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This is a very, heartbreaking story, especially where we started off at the beginning with Miss Lee. I thought that was, because, especially when you saw her reaching for something, you saw, her, sides were bruised. You're like, what was that about? I thought, maybe she was getting abused or something, which she was, but not in the way I thought was going to be where that, I didn't expect, her to get attacked and die. I wasn't expecting that. Someone to, the moment someone was, flickering a lighter, I was like, are they going to try and blow the place up? I thought, her place would get, destroyed or something, but she luckily got out of it. I thought she would get out of it. I was like, no, her place was burned down. you could tell she was being harassed. The fact is, there was stuff, being written on her Yelp page, and you know that that dude, he was like, yo, my nephew's a complete and utter ass. Because it's how could you say such... Because even he was his uncle's how could you say such vile stuff? He's almost yeah, but it's not true. But for him, it's he felt vindicated by doing that, because it's right, I don't mean what I was saying, not really. It was it doesn't... On some level, to say the crap you have said, you have to, believe that on some level to say something so vile and terrible like that, and to post multiple things because it's right, our business is suffering, so it's not fair, we've been here for so long, and she gets to just come in, and it's yeah, it's not fair that she's treated, and then Mel says, yeah, it's not fair that Miss Lee ended up getting treated like an outsider in a community she grew up in, that this used to be Chinatown, and this used to be where this is the area she's always known, and she's been treated like an outsider in a community she grew up in, and things are changing, and it's just yeah, he did a very stupid, ignorant thing for the purposes of right, I want my family business to survive. It's just almost yeah, but the fact is, he thought oh, it's okay because she is, it's I'll say these terrible things just to hurt her business. I'm not really trying to attack her personally. It's yeah, but you saying those vile things will vindicate other people being yeah, and you'll reassure and reconfirm what some people have, who have that hate in their heart. You're just going to because they feel oh my God, thank you for speaking such truth or something like that. So that was kind of very, very crappy on that guy's part to do that. The whole Frank thing I thought was really interesting, because I didn't know what to really expect from that. Because the moment he showed up at her place, he was the last person there when on the security camera, I was oh, Frank's going to end up being at first I thought he was actually going to do something to her, which is so sad because she knows him. Because I was oh, is this some random? It was no, she's oh, Frank, come in, you want this and that? And the moment he hears a noise, he ran. It is that bystander effect of just right, you got scared and you ran. I'm it sucks, but it is a thing of I understand, but I wasn't expecting it to turn out that he was actually involved in it. I was you are a garbage human being, and it's I was going to give you some slack, cut you some slack, or just right, you were scared. It's yeah, it's a good thing I ran, because, Miss Lee ended up dead. It's yeah, but he didn't catch himself realizing cool, if that's being said, is if you were there, you could have helped her out, you could have called 911, you were there, but you didn't do anything, you just ran, but now it makes sense later on why he didn't say anything, because he was involved. Because the guys that did this were people he grew up in the same neighborhood as. They've been friends forever. It's gotta find yourself some new friends. And that's the sad thing of you visited that bakery, and when your friends are filled with all this hate and stuff, you might not side, maybe you don't believe it, or maybe on some level you do, but it's you were friendly enough with Miss Lee to make it seem that wasn't there, but you let your friends hate consume them, and you didn't do anything to stop it. That's the issue there. It's just it's just a heartbreaking situation, especially how that plays into the episode about obviously this is a hate crime, but even Dante saying from his perspective as a cop, it's hate crimes are hard to prove, because more often than not, they're not connected crimes. I'm sure there are situations where it is, but it's probably such a rare thing but it's like, yeah, it's usually there's no connection between the person and the victim. So and there's usually no eyewitnesses. So stuff like that typically gets like not fully dealt with. And that's a frustrating aspect for him, as a cop. I'm sure, because he, hate crimes of any caliber, and especially of this caliber probably like affect him too, because it's like, right, he's a black guy, so it's like, right, like my community gets targeted just like theirs does, so it's just, it also feels like if you can't help, not being able to help one community makes you kind of feel like, oh, like if I can't help this community, I can't help my community, I can't help this other minority community as well. So I think it weighs on you, because like at the end of the day, Dante's a really good cop and he always wants to do his best to help people, but not being able to help people is the most frustrating thing. You have the badge, you have the position, but not being able to do anything is frustrating. Especially the guy, Mr. Chung, who had gotten attacked. Like, the police couldn't speak Cantonese, so they never bothered to come back and check up on him. And so that's why he didn't report anything later on. It's like, oh, why didn't you like check back up with the cops? He's like, if they weren't even going to bother to listen to me, like, why even bother? And so it kind of creates that thing of like, cool, like when something does happen, a community might be less likely to get the cops involved, because it's like, oh, like, I mean, you already how the black community already feels about cops, and then I'm sure like an Asian community that feels like they're not heard or listened to is going to start feeling the same way too. Of like, yeah, like what's the point? You're not going to listen. You don't like, and when you are here, you're not listening. Like, so what's the point? Because those cops, and even Dante said, like, those cops should have checked back in on that, but they didn't. They just like, it is what it is. And then there's a lot of stuff that happens that just apparently gets swept under the rug, whether it's like certain vandalisms and stuff like that. Because there's, without actual evidence, there's not much that can actually be done without no witnesses or anything like that. Because a lot of the vandalism, I think, is on small enough scale wise that it's just like, it's just paperwork, so no one actually got hurt or killed, it's fine. Not trying to say like that generally all across the board that everyone handles that, but I'm sure there are smaller pockets of people who probably just kind of like shrug some of that off, and some of those crimes just in general are harder to solve just because, like I said, there is no connective tissue, there is not enough evidence to lead them to like taking someone down. And so that people getting away with that type of stuff can continue to do it over and over again without being stopped, end up being kind of a crux of this. I was actually surprised with the whole Ray situation where he ended up being the one that Robin kept running into, like the one beating the crap out of Frank, and then eventually like could you tell at first someone's watching her and then like following her? But I didn't expect that. I was wondering what was going to happen there, but it's like, oh, turns out Frank is an ex-cop. And he quit the force because it's like he was a cop for like 30 decades, but it's just like cases like this, kind of like with Dante, it's like it wears you down just being able to like, I can't do anything. Like these terrible things keep happening, and no matter what, I can't do anything about it. Dante's kept going, but I think he's still young enough in his career where you've done it as long as Ray did. He said it was like a cop for 30 years. That will wear you down to the point like, I'm done. Like, what's the point? What's the point of having a badge when I can't really help the people who need my help? When I can't really solve and stop kind of the evil, terrible things from happening, I am curious what ended up happening to Frank, like, because he was a participant in everything. Because granted, by getting Frank to crack, you get the others, but he ended up lawyering up, and I don't think nothing came from him actually giving anything up. So I don't know if he suffered anything in the aftermath of all of this or not, because we never found out what happened to him. But I still get the feeling like because he was a participant, like he played his own role in it, even though he wasn't like he still played an active enough role that he could probably still get charged with something. So I don't know. I guess that's just kind of left up to you to kind of figure out for yourself whether or not that is the case. I feel like he still played enough of a role for him to kind of get caught up in all of this as well. But I was kind of worried the moment Ray was like, yeah, this isn't going to work out. Like, there's no evidence. There's no way to actually get these guys to stop them. He's just, once again, tired from it all happening over and over again. And I thought, I was like, oh my God. And it ended up being where it would go. Like, Ray was going to take matters in his own hand. I was like, please don't do this, Ray. But the moment he went there, it's like, oh, he never, at what point did he pull out the gun and we find out why? He didn't have it on him. He was willing to sacrifice himself. He had himself wired up, and he was going to, let them confess to what they did and then kill him. For him, it's like, I will sacrifice myself if it means putting away these guys, stopping them by whatever means, getting justice for Miss Lee. Luckily, Mel showed up in time to save him, but it was also like that, once again, that hateful conversation of like, because they are someone who has their conspiracies, and they are someone that it believes like, oh, you're the reason everything's wrong in our country, like illnesses to the economy and stuff like that, being like, yeah, like the reason why he's like, but I like Ray being like, no, you didn't kill Miss Lee out of principle. You killed her because she hurt your pride. This 70-year-old woman beat you back. She embarrassed you. And he was like, no, the reason I killed her because she doesn't belong here, just like you. Which is funny because she has more right to be here than you do, because she's older than you. She's been in this country longer than you, most likely, you know. I mean, because who knows like how long her family's been here, under what circumstances her family came here, you know. And that's sad, because I think even Ray said at one point, it's like, yeah, she was more American, like she was an American through and through. Like, you know, it's like, why that people get so caught up in where someone comes from. It's like, oh, like, you know, because you never know. I have no idea like the struggles someone else's family went through, but it's still like, I'm not saying everyone has this, even if it's just a small percentage of people, even 1% of people, that's still a big enough voice of it, like of hate, you know, that it's just, it sucks. I'm not trying to be like, oh my God, like, this new thing called racism. It's like, no, it's always been there. It just, I thought was kind of an interesting thing of like, you know, this case was solved, but it's still a thing of there could always be another. They don't act like, oh, everything's resolved, but, you know, it allowed, you know, a tragedy that people were able to rally behind. The woman who brought the case to Robin, Miss Lee's constant noise, as she says, like Miss Lee referred to her as, that she's like, I'm going to continue to be her constant noise. I'm going to speak, you know, and she rallied the community around Miss Lee and just what happened to her, making sure that it never happens again, that no tragedy like that happens again. And will it, you know, sadly, human beings being the garbage beings that we are, it will happen, because we make any excuse to hate and kill each other whenever we, you know. But like I said, I just thought it was interesting that, circling back, that Ray was willing to sacrifice himself like that. And I love that line from Mel being like, you know, I got to make sure, I apparently can't leave you alone because you can't be trusted not to do something crazy or stupid. So she's like, I'm going to go to the hospital with you because you are necessary. And I think that could be meaning a multitude of things. One, like, Miss Lee wouldn't want you to die just for the sake of getting justice for her. She wouldn't want that. Two, you are needed because this community is going to need someone like you, someone who's willing to speak up, do what's necessary to protect this community. Granted, don't go too all out there, you know, vigilante justicing it like you have been, but, you know, someone to be their voice, to be that person that sees them, who speaks for them, you know, who can be that representative, who can call out the BS, you know, in the system that isn't helping his community, you know. I think that's an important role that he has. So like, it's just a heartbreaking story that, yeah, there's a silver lining, I guess, but it's like, there is no like happy ending. Miss Lee is still going, like her business was burnt down like that. But like I said, at least the community can rally together and do something good, I guess, you know, from this tragedy, you know. That's which even I'm still kind of like, oh, something good can come from this tragedy. It's still like, it's still just, those words still weigh heavy, you know. They don't, it's not like, I don't know. That those words never really sit right with me. Like, oh, making something good from a tragedy. I get the messaging behind it, but it always just kind of leaves like a sour taste, in at least my mouth in particular. And so, luckily, the guys who killed Miss Lee as well as tried to kill Ray are going to her first degree murder and his attempted murder is going to be enough to put them away for a long time. They got what they deserved, so. Which, is so messed up because they believe that she got what she deserved. And it's like, yeah, the lady who's done nothing to anyone, that just opened a bakery, who was nothing but kind to people, just trying to make a living for herself. Yeah, yeah, that sweet lady deserved it, right? It's a depressing episode with that aspect to it. Other elements, we have the continuation of the Kisha situation, which I thought was interesting. She's supposed to be giving a speech I think it was like at a high school, basically like a scared straight program, a little bit like learn from my experiences and never go down that route. Because Kisha was like, yeah, like I used to be kind of an athlete back in the day, wasn't always good on the technical side of things, but I picked up stuff fast, but life, happened and she ended up going down the wrong path regardless. And she was like, years ago, she remembered seeing someone in school, come from that scare straight thing, and she was like, I remember thinking that person was a loser, and I never made the mistakes they did. And what did I do? I ended up making the mistakes they did. So she's like, I feel like the loser. So she's like, what's the point of me getting up there? Like, none of those kids are going to listen to what I have to say because I wasn't willing to listen back then myself. So, but it's like, yeah, like some of them may laugh and stuff like that, but you now know what it's like to be in that woman's shoes, like how much strength it takes to tell your story. Because talking about overcoming stuff and I think being able to talk about it was kind of what Robin was kind of getting at, as being sort of a success in its own right. Because for Kisha, it was like, all my friends, none of the people I went to school with ever landed in my situation. And it's like, yeah, because they most likely had a safety net, people there to catch them when they fell. But you didn't. All you had was to rely on was yourself. And it's like, and later on, Robin was like, cool. I invited her over for dinner. And it's like, right, if you ever need a safety net, this will be your safety net to kind of catch her whenever she falls. So I appreciate that, Robin kind of being in her life like that. I thought that was kind of pretty dope. Because I think it kind of represents that same thing, like what Miss Lee was kind of to, like, everyone in that community. I think, like, Robin kind of almost, like, even just one person at a time, being able to affect people's lives the way she is. Like, she's affecting Kisha's life the way she is. Having her take, things one step at a time, I think that can mean a lot going forward. Because impacting one person could lead that person to impacting one person or two people, and they go off and impact someone else. Like, it matters in the long run, And even if it is just impacting one person's life in a positive way, that I think is always good. Like putting more good in the world can never be a bad thing, What I also thought was kind of an interesting little subplot too was the whole Aunt Vi working on like kind of a thing that she only does once every year, like a certain like dish that she makes, and Delilah kind of bailed on it, but then like her mom kind of guilted her into it, but also realizing like she never thought too much about it because it was such a staple thing in her life that she was like, yeah, I can blow it off, it's not that big of a deal. But it's like, no, the hard work that Vi puts into this recipe, it's a very special family thing, and for her to blow it off like it means nothing is kind of an issue for Robin. And even Delilah kind of recognized, like, right, it was kind of messed up, it is something I took for granted. So I thought that was kind of nice. She even did things kind of her own way, even bringing the bread, and it's like, yeah, she was like, oh, Robin, did you tell her? And she was like, nope, I didn't have to tell her to bring the bread. So them all together at the end I thought was pretty nice. Kind of another kind of subplot element I think is kind of interesting. They touch on Dante's dad a little bit, because Ray knew him. He was like, oh, like, wait, is your dad Big Ben? He was like, yeah. And it's like, yeah, like, he's like, your dad would help me back in the day with those cases, like, I couldn't like crack, and he was like, yeah, your dad was a good cop, and he was like, yeah, like, but for him, it's like, it didn't stop his dad from kind of going down a bad route, but he was like, at the end of the day, he's like, things were complicated back then, like, being a cop from our respective communities didn't, like, make, looking like the way we did, the way we look isn't wasn't the easiest thing as being a cop. Being a good cop was like a hard thing, especially looking the way we do. Like, so I think it gave Dante a little bit of a perspective, because he had talked about the fact is he never really heard too many people talk about good things about his dad, you know, because no matter what good his dad's ever done, it's always going to be overshadowed by the bad that he did. But, you know, and I think that's kind of interesting. That I think it's kind of an important thing to always kind of note. Like, it isn't always a one for one, but you should not always be defined by the thing you did on your worst day. You should be defined by what you did on every other day. It's kind of an important notion and thing to kind of keep in mind, I think. So I'm curious to see what this conversation, I think this is kind of like a little, I'm curious to see where that kind of goes in the long run when it comes to Dante and his dad, like where that potentially will lead going forward, because his dad is the reason why he tries to be the person he is, that he is such a stickler for the rules, why he tried to be so beyond reproach, is because he has to be the cop he wants to be while also being above and beyond what his dad was. You know, got to make up for like the mistakes his dad made. So I think all of that kind of plays as a contributing factor. So just some like I said, very kind of in many regards like a very depressing episodes. Like I said, there is that there's that hopeful silver lining to it. Like I am the pessimist I am, so like I kind of tend to, I think, flow towards the negativity in a lot of stuff. But I like to call myself a pessimist with optimistic tendencies. So I do also want to highlight like the hopefulness and, you know, there being a light at the end of this dark tunnel, essentially. So obviously, I'm really interested to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.